It's nice to be back. So we're reading in Canto 7 of Book 2, The Descent into Night. Aswapati, in his journey through the subtle planes, had gone through up into the life worlds, the vital planes, and had gone into the kingdoms of the greater life in the last canto. And he found there that there were great possibilities, but nothing was ever fully achieved. There was never any complete fulfillment that could be had. There was always a kind of transience that was there, things always changing, delight coming, but then always leaving again and going. So he never found a complete fulfillment, and he never found the cure, the solution to the problem of pain and suffering there. So in the present canto, he took a plunge into the night, into the darkness, to look for that key of change. And he goes down to the very base of existence, where the creation emerges out of the void, out of the inane. He goes down deep to that very source of existence, of the creation. Now, it's not the source in terms of the divine or light, but out of the inconscience from which it emerges. The evolution emerges from the inconscience. So he goes down looking for that key. So we've read through, or you've read through, the last several weeks, most of this canto of that descent into night. And Aswapati, or Sri Aurobindo, describes there what Aswapati sees emerging out of that void, out of that darkness. And it's a world of suffering and pain and evil are all emerging from that. And so Sri Aurobindo describes the world that he sees there, that Aswapati sees. And it's quite terrible, and I guess reminding us really of the horrors of the Second World War, in which that world or that kingdom found some expression in our world here. So all these planes of existence through which Aswapati is traveling have their influences here in our world as well. And that lowest, darkest plane also. So it was a kind of a terrible description of that, of the beings and the scenes of that world. And now we're in the last section on page 216. and he's going to go down even further into a kind of a blank void from which all emerges. So we'll continue from there. Turia, would you like to begin at the break on 216?
Like termite cities from the sun, oppressed mid-crowd and tramp and noise and flare, passing from dusk to deeper, dangerous dusk. He wrestled with powers that snatched from mind its light and smote from him their clinging influences. Soon he emerged in a dim, wall-less space. For now, the people trapped were left behind. He walked between wide banks of paling eve. Around him grew a gaunt spiritual blank, a threatening waste, a sinister loneliness that left mind bare to an unseen assault, an empty page on which all that willed could write stark, monstrous messages without control. A traveling dot on downward roads of dusk, mid barren fields and bounds and straggling huts, and a few crooked and phantasmal trees. He faced a sense of death and conscious void.
Thank you. Let's pause. So first, Aswapati enters a realm that's full of beings, it's like termite cities in the darkness underground, but oppressed mid crowd and tramp and noise and flare. So there's an activity in this dark realm. But he's going deeper and deeper down into this tunnel where these termite cities are. And he's fighting, he's wrestling with powers that are snatching light from his mind. And he's smote from him, he's cutting away their clinging influences. But then he emerges into another space where there are no more beings. It's even a darker place. He's just walking now in the darkness. And around him grew a gaunt spiritual blank, very desolate, bleak, emptiness, a threatening waste, a sinister loneliness. He's all alone, walking through this space. and he can't see anywhere around, and yet his mind is somehow open to these unseen influences that are there. That could give their messages, put their messages into his mind. So he's traveling alone downward these roads of dusk, of night. And there's just some barren fields and barns and huts and a few crooked trees. And he has this sense of death and a conscious void. Becomes more important as we go through this conscious void. It's kind of an emptiness, but it's aware, it's self-aware. And he'll continue and experience that in greater and greater fullness. Helmut, would you continue?
It's funny because it's a conscious void, but it snatches from mind, it like it leaves mind bare, so it leaves mind completely empty and void. But it is conscious, but not the void mind it creates.
It takes all kind of thought away, so it's just kind of blank. But itself is aware. It's aware of the void, but there's no movement in it of thought, of conception, of images. Okay, Helmut?
But still, the hostile life unseen was there, whose death-like voice, resisting light and truth, made living a bleak gap in nullity. He heard the grisly voices that deny, sailed by thoughts that swarmed like spectral hordes, a prey to the starting phantoms of the gloom, and terror approaching with its lethal mouth, driven by a strange will down, ever down, the sky above, a communique of doom. He strove to shield his spirit from despair, but felt the horror of the growing night and the abyss rising to claim his soul.
Thank you. Let's pause. Seems that in this darkness, although he can't really see any beings or people there, he still senses a kind of a hostile presence or life. And he hears kind of these terror-inducing voices in the darkness, that deny life, that deny any light. And he's assailed by thoughts that swarmed like spectral hordes. Spectral are ghostly. So many kind of terrible thoughts are assailing his mind. And he's kind of prey to this. He can't hardly defend himself. He can't see where it's all coming from. He's just open to their attack. So it's very frightening situation in which he finds himself. Because everything around, he senses this hostility that would just like to erase him, blot him out, his existence. He strove to shield his spirit from despair, but felt the horror of the growing night and the abyss rising to claim his soul. He senses this darkness wanting to just swallow him up into it.
What does make living the big gap in nullity?
Made living a bleak gap in nullity. Yeah, it's this life is there, but it's resisting light and truth. It's death-like. And so the life, that kind of life, whatever that is, that presence, it is just like a gap in nothingness. It's just a little something surrounded by nothingness. But it's, whatever it is, it's still very dark and unholy. Ghostly. Almost kind of shadowy. And Ronnie, would you continue? Then ceased.
Then ceased the abodes of creatures and their forms, and solitude wrapped him in its voiceless folds. All vanished suddenly like a thought expunged. His spirit became an empty, listening gulf, void of the dead illusion of a world. Nothing was left, not even an evil face. He was alone with the gray python night. A dense and nameless nothing, conscious, mute, which seemed alive but without body or mind, lusted all beings to annihilate, that it might be forever nude and sole. As in a shapeless beast's intangible jaws, ripped, strangled by that lusting, vicious blot,
Viscous.
attracted to some black and giant mouth, and swallowing throat and a huge belly of doom, his being from its own vision disappeared, drawn towards depths that hungered for its fall.
Thank you. So it's as if he's descending deeper into the night, into the darkness. And now even these kind of barren huts and barns are disappearing. He sees nothing around. And he's alone. The solitude wrapped him in its voiceless folds. So maybe now also the voices disappear. He doesn't hear anymore. He's just alone, surrounded by this darkness. His spirit became an empty, listening gulf. Again, it's kind of this conscious void. Yes? Expunged is to be wiped out, to be eliminated. So like a thought rubbed out. It just becomes empty. Void of the dead illusion of a world. As if all form was no longer real. It had emerged out of that emptiness, and now he's going to where it has come from. A dense and nameless nothing, conscious, mute, which seemed alive but without body or mind. Lusted all beings to annihilate. It's as if this conscious void is just trying to swallow any kind of form, any glimmer of life or light into its emptiness, into its darkness, that it might be forever nude and sole, alone, that there was just that emptiness.
So this is lusted all means, that means that the conscious light, or the great light is in the way acting conscious.
Well, it's as if it's swallowing all life, all existence within itself. So it's as if it's being swallowed. Like a black hole, yeah. But he makes it a little more terrible, like a shapeless beast's intangible jaws, gripped, strangled by that lusting, viscous blot. Viscous means having a gluey consistency, sticky, like being swallowed again. Attracted to some black and giant mouth and swallowing throat and a huge belly of doom. His being from its own vision disappeared, drawn towards depths that hungered for its fall. Margaret, could you continue?
A formless void oppressed his struggling brain. A darkness grim and cold benumbed his flesh. A whispered grey suggestions chilled his heart. Hailed by a serpent force from its warm home and dragged to extinction in bleak vacancy, life clung to its seed, his cords of gasping breath. Lapped was his body by a tenebrous tongue, existence smothered, travailed to survive. Hope strangled, perished in his empty soul. Belief and memory abolished, died, and all that helps the spirit in its course. There crawled through every tense and aching nerve, leaving behind its poignant, quaking trail, the nameless and unutterable fear.
Thank you. It's as if he's being swallowed by that dark void now, and he's just struggling to survive, to keep some sense of self and light. Hope, as if strangled, perished, died in his empty soul. Belief and memory abolished, died. So all that, these kind of activities of the mind are dying, and all that helps the spirit in its course. And then, because he's being swallowed in this emptiness now, so he's losing this sense of self.
But he's healed.
Healed is
Softened force.
it's being pulled or drawn. He's being pulled down. And he feels this terrible fear gripping him as he's losing all sense of existence and self. They're crawled through every tense and aching nerve, leaving behind its poignant, quaking trail. It's terribly distressing sense or feeling, a nameless and unutterable fear.
The touching the description that she Auroville experienced all this, what we also experience. And often I said, who knows all this, we can help us.
Yeah, it's as if Sri Aurobindo had to go through all of this, to go down to the very bottom of the subconscious, to the inconscient, where all of this suffering and pain arises out of this. And then the approach alarmed his mind, forever dumb, of an implacable eternity of pain, inhuman and intolerable. So he has the sense or the fear of being swallowed up into this emptiness and to be conscious in that state for all eternity, to never be able to come out of that. What a terrible fear that must be, to and perhaps there's some reflection of that even when people are dying, if they have no faith or in anything. They also may feel like they're entering into this darkness, the end of life, of their existence. But here, it's a terrible, painful state. It's not just an emptiness, it's something worse. Kind of a hell. That's what the Christians describe hell as being, something like this, I think.
But according to the near-death experiences, the people go forward to the black tunnel, yes, but very soon emerge in the light.
Right. But just, I'm kind of referring to that before a person is dying, or just,
Before.
Yeah, just as they're dying and they feel themselves going into this darkness. I don't know, some people may fear, some people may be, at ease and have faith that the light is coming, but
I think also the mother's mission was to build the column of light so that you can get more quicker and easy go to the light to the other side. And when people are positive and love, then it's easy. They easily reach this light of column and go to the other side.
yeah, that was one of her works that she explained that she had done, was to create kind of passages for souls that were leaving their bodies, that they could enter more easily into the light and pass through these dark realms.
She also said that it was one of the moment of death for parents. It was perhaps one of the most important inside of this. What people feel and aspire to, maybe determine the future life.
Yeah, they say that moment is very important.
And also, Savitri and the mother's effort was to overcome death, the darkness of death. That was for the world that is.
Yeah, of course, just the teaching in general that life continues, that existence continues after death, that it's just a passage, one enters into a transition period, one enters into the psychic world, a place of peace and rest and rejuvenation and divine presence, and then comes back again into incarnation. Just having all of that knowledge or faith is very relieving of any of this kind of fear that may come. So we continue. Tinika.
This he must bear, his hope of heaven and strength. He must ever exist without extintion's peace, in a slow, suffering time and tortured space. An anguished nothingness, his endless state. A lifeless vacancy was now his breast, and in the place where once was luminous thought, only remained like a pale, motionless ghost, an incapacity for faith and hope, and the dread conviction of a vanquished soul, immortal still, but with its Godhead lost, self lost, and God and touch of happier worlds. But he endured, stilled the vain terror, bore the smothering coils of agony and all affright. Then peace returned, and the soul's sovereign gaze. To the blank horror, a calm light replied, immutable, undying and unborn, mighty and mute, the Godhead in him woke, and faced the pain and danger of the world. He mastered the tides of nature with a look. He met with his bare spirit naked hell.
Thank you. So first he endures this terrible condition of feeling of existing consciously forever in this void, enduring terrible suffering, and staying in that forever. He endures that, but then he stills the terror, the fear, and he bears the coils of agony and fear, and peace returns, his soul's sovereign gaze. So he returns, the spirit within him again becomes conscious, perhaps observing this darkness, this hell in which he lives, as if standing back from it, not absorbed into it. It's able to withstand that hell, not become absorbed by it. So to the blank horror, a calm light replied, immutable, undying, and unborn. That's that spirit within us is immortal, mighty and mute. The Godhead in him woke and faced the pain and danger of the world. He mastered the tides of nature with a look. He met with his bare spirit naked hell. Yeah, it's as if he goes down to the base of things, into this nothingness. Well, he faces it. It's just described here. It's as if he's, becoming absorbed into it, but he then endured, stilled the terror within him, quieted it down, bore the agony and pain. And as he does that, then the peace came, the peace of his spirit he could feel again. It's as if it reawoke or something. It wasn't completely cut off by this darkness. It still remained in the face of it. But unfortunately, his terror does not end here. It continues into the next canto.
Maybe also advice for us to train very good in all circumstances to stay calm and to let the light and come back and go in the situation and training for us.
Yeah, we have difficulty doing it when there's a little upset in our life, to remain calm, but to be faced with this, kind of hellish surrounding, to be smothered by it, and then to retain it. So we have to practice with our little trials and tribulations. So shall we continue into the worlds of hell? So Canto 8, the world of falsehood, the mother of evil, and the sons of darkness. It's out of this conscious void, this conscious emptiness, that these beings that are the authors of all pain and suffering in the world emerge from that. So now we'll see these beings kind of emerging out of that emptiness. And they then are the source of all of our pain and suffering. So now, instead of stopping and commenting, we'll just read through the canto. It's about 12 pages. Okay. So you'll begin?
Then could he see the hidden heart of night, the labor of its stark unconsciousness, revealed the endless terrible in name. A spiritless blank infinity was there. A nature that denied the eternal truth in the vain regard, freedom of its thought, hoped to abolish God and reign alone. There was no sovereign guest, no witness light. Unhelped, it would create its own bleak world. Its large blind eyes looked out of demon acts. Its deaf ears heard the untruth, its dumb lips spoke. Its huge misguided fancy took vast shapes. Its mindless sentience quivered with fierce conceits, and engendered a brute principle of life. Evil and pain begot a monstrous soul.
Thank you. Madam, would you like to read next? In the orange. Would you like to read?
The anarchs of the formless depth arose, great Titan beings in demonic power, world egos racked with lust and thought and will, vast minds and lives without a spirit within, impatient architects of error's house, leaders of the cosmic ignorance and unrest, and sponsors of sorrow and mortality, embodied the dark ideas of the abyss. A shadow substance into emptiness came. Dim forms were born in an unthinking void, and eddies met and made an adverse space in whose black folds being imagined hell. His eyes piercing the triple-plated gloom identified their sight with its blind stare. Accustomed to the unnatural dark, they saw unreality made real and conscious night.
Thank you. Everybody's read except you. Would you like to read? Okay, just 1 second. Go ahead.
A violent, fierce, and formidable world, an ancient womb of huge, calamitous dreams, coiled like a larva in the obscurity that keeps it from the spare points of heaven's stars. It was the gate of a false infinite, an eternity of disastrous absolutes, an immense negation of spiritual things, all once self-luminous in the spirit's sphere, turned now into their own dark contraries, being collapsed into a pointless void that yet was a zero parent of the world, inconscience swallowing up the cosmic mind, produced a universe from its lethal sleep. Bliss into black coma fallen, insensible, coiled back to itself and God's eternal joy, through a false, poignant figure of grief and pain. Still dolorously nailed upon a cross, fixed in the soil of a dumb, insentient world, where birth was a pang and death an agony, lest all too soon should change again to bliss.
Thank you. Back.
Hot sat a priestess of perversity on her black tripod of the triune snake, reading by opposite signs the eternal script, a sorceress rehearsing life's God frame. In darkling aisles with evil eyes for lamps, and fatal voices chanting from the apse, in strange infernal dim basilicas, intoning the magic of the unholy word, the ominous, profound initiate performed the ritual of her mysteries. Their suffering was nature's daily food, alluring to the anguished heart and flesh, and torture was the formula of delight. Pain mimicked the celestial ecstasy. Their good, a faithless gardener of God, watered with virtue the world's upas tree, and careful of the outward word and act, engrafted this hypocrite blooms on native ill. All high things served their nether opposite. The forms of gods sustained a demon cult. Heaven's face became a mask and snare of hell. There in the heart of vain phenomenon, in an enormous actions-ridden core. He saw a shape, illimitable and vague, sitting on death, who swallows all things born, a chill, fixed face with dire and motionless eyes, a dreadful trident in a shadowy hand. Outstretched, she pierced all creatures with one fate.
Thank you. Sohi.
When nothing was fixed matter without soul, and a spiritless hollow was the heart of time, then life was touched the insensible abyss, awakening the stark void to hope and grief. Her pallid beams smote the unfathomed night, in which God hid himself from his own view. In all the things she sought, their slumbering mystic truth, the unspoken word that inspires unconscious forms. She groped in his deeps for an invisible law, fumbled in the dim subconscient for his mind, and strove to find a way for spirit to be. But from the night another answer came. A seed was in that neither matrix cast, a dumb, unprobed husk of perverted truth, a cell of insentient infinite. A monstrous birth prepared its cosmic form in nature's titan embryo, ignorance.
Thank you.
In a fatal and stupendous hour, something that sprang from a stark inconscient sleep, unwillingly begotten by the mute void, lifted its ominous head against the stars, overshadowing earth with its huge body of doom. It chilled the heavens with the means of a face. A nameless power of shadowy will arose, immense and alien to our universe, in the inconceivable purpose no can gauge. A vast non-being robed itself with shape, the boundless nations of the unconscious depth, covered eternity with nothingness. A seeking mind replaced the seeing soul. Life grew into a huge and hungry death. The spirit's bliss was changed to a cosmic pain, assuring God's self called neutrally. A mighty opposition conquered space.
Thank you. Suresh.
The Savitri ruling fought death and grief. It caused it fight harmony on the earth.
Disharmonizing.
Disharmonizing the original style of the architecture of a text design. It flushed with the criminal cosmic will and bound to struggle and bear
Vicissitudes.
the long, slow process of the patent power, implanting error in the stuff of things. It made an ignorance of the all-wise law. It baffled the true touch of life's sixth sense, kept dumb the intuitive life in matter's sleep, deformed the insect's instant and the fruits, disfigured man's thought burn humanity. A shadow stretched across the simply prayed. Obscure was the truth light in the calm heart that burns unwitnessed in the altar faith. Behind the scale, Velleman's secrecy, com- accompanying the goddess of the shine.
Thank you. I'll continue. Thus was the dire antagonist energy born, who minds the eternal mother's mighty shape and mocks her luminous infinity with a gray, distorted silhouette in the night. Arresting the passion of the climbing soul, she forced on life a slow and faltering pace, her hands deflecting and retarding weight is laid on the mystic evolution's curve, the tortuous line of her deceiving mind. The gods see not, and man is impotent. Oppressing the God spark within the soul, she forces back to the beast the human fall. Yet in her formidable, instinctive mind, she feels the one grow in the heart of time and sees the immortal shine through the human mold. Alarmed for her rule and full of fear and rage, she prowls around each light that gleams through the dark, casting its ray from the spirit's lonely tent, hoping to enter with fierce, stealthy tread, and in the cradle slay the divine child. Joy?
Incalculable are her strength and ruse. Her touch is a fascination and a death. She kills her victim with his own delight. Even good, she makes a hook to drag to hell. For her, the world runs to its agony. Often, the pilgrim of the Eternal's road, ill-lit from clouds by the pale moon of mind, or in the various highways wandering alone, or lost in deserts where no path is seen, falls overpowered by her lionly, a conquered captive under her dreadful paws. Intoxicated by a burning breath, an amorous groan of a destroying mouth, once a companion of the sacred fire, the mortal perishes to God and light. An adversary governs heart and brain, a nature hostile to the mother force.
Thank you. Elmer?
The self of life yields up its instruments to titan and demoniac agencies that aggrandize earth, nature, and his frame. The cowled fifth columnist is now thought's guide. His subtle defeatist murmur slays the faith, and lodged in the breast of whispering from outside, a lying inspiration fell and dark, a new order substitute for the divine. A silence falls upon the spirit's heights. From the veiled sanctuary, the god retires. Empty and cold is the chamber of the bride. The golden nimbus now is seen no more. No longer burns the white spiritual ray, and hushed forever is the secret voice. Then by the angel of the vigil tower, a name is struck from the recording book. A flame that sang in heaven sinks, quenched and mute. In ruin ends the epic of a soul. This is the tragedy of the inner death. When forfeited is the divine element, and only a mind and body live to die.
Thank you. Margaret?
For terrible agencies the Spirit allows, and they are subtle and enormous powers that shield themselves with a covering ignorance. Offspring of the gulfs, agent of the shadowy force, haters of light, intolerant of peace, aping to the sword, the shining friend and guide, opposing in the heart the eternal will. They veil the occult, uplifted, harmonist. This wisdom's oracles are made our bonds. The doors of God they have locked with keys of truth, and shut out by the law his tireless grace. Along all nature's lines they have set their post, and intercept the caravans of light. Wherever the gods act, they intervene. A yoke is laid upon the world's dim heart, mask all its beats from the supernal bliss, and the closed peripheries of brilliant mind block the fine entries of celestial fire. Always the dark adventurers seem to win. Nature their fill with evil's institutes, turn into defeat the victories of truth, proclaim as falsehood the eternal laws, and load the dice of doom with withered lies. The world's shrines they have occupied, usurped its thrones.
Thank you. Ronnie?
In scorn of the dwindling chances of the gods, they claim creation as their conquered fief, and crown themselves the iron lords of time. Adepts of the illusion and the mask, the artificers of nature's fall and pain, have built their altars of triumphant night in the clay temple of terrestrial life. In the vacant precincts of the sacred fire, in front of the reredos of the mystic rite, facing the dim velamin none can pierce, intones his solemn hymn, the mitred priest, invoking their dreadful presence in his breast, attributing to them the awful name. He chants the syllables of the magic text and summons the unseen communion's act, while twixt the incense and the muttered prayer, all the fierce veil with which the world is racked is mixed in the foaming chalice of man's heart and poured to them like sacramental wine.
Thank you.
Assuming names, divine they guide and rule. Opponents of the highest, they have come. out of their world of soulless thought and power, to serve by enmity the cosmic scheme. Night is their refugee and strategic base. Against the sword of flame, the luminous eye. Bastioned, they live in massive forts of gloom, calm and secure in sunless privacy. No wandering ray of heaven can enter there. Armored, protected by their lethal masks, as in a studio of creative death. The giant sons of darkness sit and plan the drama of the earth, their tragic stage. All who would raise the fallen world must come under the dangerous arches of their power. For even the radiant children of the gods, to darken their privilege, is a dreadful right. None can reach heaven who has not passed through hell.
Thank you. Yes.
This too the traveler of the worlds must dare, a warrior in the dateless duel strife. He entered into dumb, despairing night, challenging the darkness with his luminous soul. Alarming with his steps the threshold gloom, he came into a fierce and dolorous realm, peopled by souls who never had tasted bliss, ignorant like men born blind who know not light. They could equate worse ills with highest good. Virtue was to their eyes a face of sin, and evil and misery were their natural state. A dire administration's penal code, making of grief and pain the common law, decreeing universal joylessness, had changed life into a stoic sacrament and torture into a daily festival. An act was passed to chastise happiness. Laughter and pleasure were banned as deadly sins. A questionless mind was ranked in wise content, a dull heart silent apathy as peace. Sleep was not there. Torpor was the sole rest. Death came, but neither respite gave nor end. Always the soul lived on and suffered more.
Thank you.
Ever he deeper probed that kingdom of pain, around him grew the terror of a world, of agony followed by worse agony, and in the terror a great wicked joy, glad of one's own and others' calamity. Their thought and life were a long punishment, the breath a burden, and all hope a scourge, the body a field of torment, a masked unease. Repose was awaiting between pang and pang. This was the law of things none dreamed to change, a hard, somber heart, a harsh, unsmiling mind, rejected happiness like a cloying sweet. Tranquility was a tedium and ennui. Only by suffering, life grew colorful. It needed the spice of pain, the salt of tears. If one could cease to be, all would be well. Else, only fierce sensations gave some zest. A fury of jealousy burned the gnawed heart. The sting of murderous spite and hate and lust, the whisper that lures to the pit and treachery's stroke, through vivid spots on the dull, aching hours.
Thank you. Tinek.
To watch the drama of infelicity, the writhing of creatures under the harrow's doom, and sorrow's tragic gaze into the night, and horror and the hammering heart of fear were the ingredients in time's heavy cup, that pleased and helped to enjoy its bitter taste. Of such fierce stuff was made up life's long hell. These were the threads of the dark spider's web in which the soul was caught, quivering and wrapped. This was religion. This was nature's rule. In a fell chapel of iniquity, to worship a black, pitiless image of power, kneeling one must, cross hearted stony chords. A pavement like a floor of evil fate. Each stone was a keen edge of ruthless force, and glued with the chilled blood from torture's breast. The dry, gnarled trees stood up like dying men, stiffened into a pose of agony, and from each window peered an ominous priest, chanting Te Deums for slaughter's crowning grace. Uprooted cities, blasted human homes, burned written bodies, the bombshells massacre.
Thank you. Devish.
Our enemies are fallen, they sang. All who once stayed our will are smitten and dead. How great we are, how merciful art thou. Thus thought they to reach God's impassive throne, and him command whom all their acts opposed, magnifying their deeds to touch his skies, and make him an accomplice of their crimes. There no relenting pity could have place, but ruthless strength and iron moods had sway, a dateless sovereignty of terror and gloom. This took the figure of a darkened god, revered by the ragged wretchedness he had made, who held in thrall a miserable world, and helpless hearts nailed to unceasing woe, adored the feet that trampled them into mire. It was a world of sorrow and of hate, sorrow with hatred for its lonely joy, hatred with others, sorrow as its feast. A bitter rictus curled the suffering mouth, a tragic cruelty saw its ominous chance. Hate was the black archangel of that realm. It glowed a somber jewel in the heart, burning the soul with its malignant rays, and wallowed in its fell abysm of might.
Thank you.
These passions, even objects, seemed to execute, for mind overflowed into the inanimate, that answered with the wickedness it received. Against their users used malignant powers, hurt without hands and strangely suddenly slew. Appointed as instruments of an unseen doom, or they made themselves a fateful prison wall where men condemned wake through the creeping hours, counted by the tollings of an ominous bell. An evil environment worsened evil souls. All things were conscious there and all perverse. In the infernal realm, he dared to press even into the deepest pit and darkest core. Perturbed its tenebrous space, dared to contest its ancient privileged right and absolute force. In night he plunged to know her dreadful heart. In hell he sought the root and cause of hell.
Thank you.
Its anguished gulfs opened in his own breast. He listened to the clamors of its crowded pain, the heartbeats of its fatal loneliness. Above was a chill, deep eternity. In vogue, tremendous passages of doom, he heard the goblin voice that guided to slay, and faced the enchantments of the demon sign, and traversed the ambush of the opponent snake. In mincing tracts, in tortured solitudes, compassionless he roamed through desolate ways, where the red wolf waits by the fordless stream, and dead black eagles scream to the precipice, and met the hounds of Baal who hunt men's hearts, baying across the wealth of density, of destiny, in footless battlefields of abyss, fought shadowy combats in mute, eyeless depths, assaults of hell endured and titan strokes, and bore the fierce inner wounds that are slow to heal.
Thank you.
The prisoner of a hooded magic force, captured and held in falsehoods without limit, and often stranded in the nose of grief, or crossed in the grim morass of swollen death, or cut into bits of weather and despair. He went here, Russian
Drafts.
perhaps till none was left, in a world where neither hope nor joy could come. The ordeal he suffered of evil, absolute vision, that kept intact his spirit's radiant truth, incapable of motion, of or of force, in matters denied, world and blind, pinning to the black inertia of our face. He preserved between his hands the flickering soul. His being ventured into mindless void, intolerant gulf that knew not thought nor sense. For caste and style, his soul still saw on view in atomic sparklings of the infinite, near to the dumb beginnings of lost self. He felt the curious small futility of the creation of material things.
Thank you. Or, stifled in the inconscience hollow dusk, he sounded the mystery, dark and bottomless, of the enormous and unmeaning deeps, whence struggling life in a dead universe rose. There, in the stark identity lost by mind, he felt the sealed sense of the insensible world, and a mute wisdom in the unknowing night. Into the abysmal secrecy he came, where darkness peers from her mattress, gray and nude, and stood on the last locked subconscious floor, where being slept unconscious of its thoughts, and built the world, not knowing what it built. There, waiting its hour the future lay unknown. There is the record of the vanished stars. There in the slumber of the cosmic will, he saw the secret key of nature's change. A light was with him, an invisible hand was laid upon the error and the pain, till it became a quivering ecstasy, the shock of sweetness of an arm's embrace. So, Turing.
He saw in night the eternal's shadowy veil, knew death for a cellar of the house of life. In destruction felt creation's hasty base, knew loss as the price of a celestial gain, and hell as a shortcut to heaven's gate. Then, in illusion's occult factory, and in the inconscious magic printing house, torn were the formats of the primal night, and shattered the stereotypes of ignorance. Alive, breathing a deep spiritual breath, nature expunged her stiff mechanical code and the articles of the bound soul's contract. Falsehood gave back to truth her tortured shape. Annulled were the tables of the law of pain, and in their place grew luminous characters. The skillful penman's unseen finger wrote his swift, intuitive calligraphy. Earth's forms were made his divine documents. The wisdom embodied mind could not reveal, in conscience chased from the world's voiceless breast, transfigured were the fixed schemes of reasoning thought.
Thank you. Helmut.
Arousing consciousness in things in earth, he imposed upon dark atom and dumb mass the diamond script of the imperishable, inscribed on the dim heart of falling things, a paean song of the free infinite, and the name, foundation of eternity, and traced on the awake exultant cells in the ideographs of the ineffable, the lyrics of the love that waits through time, in the mystic volume of the Book of Bliss, and the message of the superconscious fire, superconscient fire. Then life beat pure in the corporeal frame. The infernal gleam died and could slay no more. Hell split across its huge abrupt facade as if a magic building were undone. Night opened and vanished like a gulf of green. Into being's gap, scooped out this empty space in which he had filled the place of the absent God, there poured a white, intimate and blissful dawn. Healed were all things that time's torn heart made, and sorrow could live no more in nature's breast. Division ceased to be, for God was there. The soul lit the conscious body with its ray, matter and spirit mingled and were one.
Thank you. So that ends today's session. We'll go back over the canto next time, passage by passage. So Aswapati's found the key of nature's change.
He mastered the tides of nature with a look. He met with his bare spirit naked hell.
Pralora
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.